when I saw my best friend's Instagram post of her sitting in my boyfriend's car again. A flood of caring messages from Justin popped up on my phone. It's raining hard. Don't forget your umbrella. The temperature dropped today. Wear a jacket. Don't walk through the garage when you get back. The water is freezing and the floor is slippery. Drink some hot tea. Your hands and feet get cold easily. Keep warm. Looking at the screen full of sweet words, I thought of Sophie's bright, smug smile on my Instagram feed. Just Dr. Justin doing his daily duty of pampering his girlfriend's bestie. Chauffeur service in a storm. Not a single drop of rain touched me. Today's score, A+. My phone kept buzzing with new texts. I didn't open them. Instead, I calmly opened my email and replied to the relocation offer that was about to expire. I'll take the Chicago transfer next Monday. Then I turned around and took a route with fewer puddles. On a rainy day, I could walk home by myself. Even with an umbrella, the storm was too fierce. By the time I got home, I was soaked to the bone. I pushed the door open, and the hum of a hairdryer filled the air. Sophie was sitting on the sofa, wearing nothing but her lace bralette. Standing behind her was Justin, gently drying her hair. Every move, every touch was filled with tenderness. The atmosphere in the living room was so intimate that neither of them noticed me walking in. Justin sighed softly. Which hair oil do you want? The rose scent. Sophie giggled, her voice dripping with sweetness. Use your favorite scent. Justin expertly picked out the oil, squeezed it into his palm, and carefully massaged it into her hair. He held her hair as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. I stood there frozen. My wet clothes clung to my skin, freezing and sticky. Sophie saw me first. Her eyes curved into a smile, and she let out a soft laugh. Chloe, why are you just getting back? Is it pouring outside? Why are you completely soaked? 3 questions in a row. I didn't even know how to answer. Justin's hands paused. He looked at me, frowning slightly. Didn't I tell you to wear a jacket and bring an umbrella? Did you forget again? For Sophie, he provided a door-to-door chauffeur service. For me, he only offered cheap text reminders. Sensing my cold gaze, Justin stiffened. He offered a clumsy explanation. Sophie got off work early, so I picked her up first. Besides, you've always been independent. You can handle yourself. A cold, heavy sensation traveled from my skin straight to my heart. I set my umbrella down and took off my ruined, waterlogged heels. I looked at him. Justin, let's break up. With a sharp crash, the bottle of hair oil slipped from Justin's hand and shattered on the floor. The strong scent of roses instantly filled the room. Justin knit his brows, his eyes locked onto me. Before he could speak, Sophie stood up. She rushed to explain, her voice frantic. Chloe, it's all my fault. I forgot to tell Justin to pick you up. I got a few drops of rain on me downstairs, so he rushed to dry my hair. He just couldn't leave. Please don't be so dramatic. Don't pick a fight with him again, okay? I stared at Sophie, completely numb. 6 months ago, she got divorced. She had been a stay-at-home wife for 3 years and ended up with nothing. In the middle of the night, she sat on a curb, crying over the phone, completely wasted. It was me who left my work behind to bring her home. It was me who took the heat to get her a job at my company and taught her everything step by step. And now? Her eyes showed fake apology, but the corners of her lips were curled up. I suddenly felt a chill run down my spine. I pushed past her and walked toward the bathroom. Justin grabbed my arm tightly. His voice was cold. Just because you got a little wet, you're taking your anger out on me? And now you're giving Sophie attitude. Chloe, are you seriously doing this? I stared at the bathroom sink. In it sat a pair of lace panties, soaking in soapy water, half-washed. My tightly suppressed emotions snapped. Like a crazy person, I smashed everything on the counter. Then, I grabbed the wet lace panties and threw them right into Justin's face. Am I doing this? How could I compare to you, Justin? You're literally hand-washing another woman's underwear. Are you out of your mind? Slap. Before I could finish, a sharp pain flared across my cheek. Justin had snapped. Chloe, watch your mouth. Don't forget that you're just an unwanted foster kid who has nobody. After the slap, Justin froze. I did too. Panic flashed in his eyes. He reached out to grab my hand. Chloe, let me explain. But he didn't get to finish. Sophie grabbed his arm. Her eyes were red, looking small and helpless. Justin apologized to Chloe. She was shivering, and Justin immediately forgot about me. He threw one last look at me. Then he let out a cold laugh, took Sophie's hand, and walked out the door without looking back. Who cares? I don't owe her anything. Before the door closed, Sophie turned to look at me. Her voice was as gentle as ever. Chloe, don't be mad. Just let Justin cool down. I'll make him come back and apologize to you, okay? The door slammed shut. With a high fever burning inside me, my legs gave out. I collapsed onto the messy floor, shivering violently as waves of dizziness hit me. I fumbled for my phone and dialed his number repeatedly. No one picked up. By the time the ambulance arrived, I used the last bit of my strength to unlock the front door. Then my mind went black, and I collapsed. In my semi-conscious state, I heard the EMT trying to call my emergency contact. Justin's voice sounded faint but pierced my ears like needles. "Stop acting, Chloe. Is playing victim your only trick?" When I woke up again, it was past midnight. There was not a single text from Justin. In my call log, there were only dozens of unanswered calls I made before I passed out. The contact name, my beloved husband, on the screen felt like a cruel joke. The emergency room was empty. I curled up on the cold chair, my hand aching from the four. Just then, a commotion came from the hallway. Through the glass door of the ward, I saw them. Sophie was covered in tears, shaking her head. "I'm pregnant. We can't keep this baby, Justin. We can't. I can't betray Chloe any more than I already have." Justin held her tightly against his chest, his eyes filled with pain, conflict, and longing. Finally, his voice broke. "But I can't let it go." Sophie looked up, her eyes filled with desperate hope. "Then what about Chloe?" Justin fell silent. After a long time, he let go of Sophie. He closed his eyes in despair, and slowly got down on his knees before her. "I'm sorry." Sophie stiffened, her gaze turning cold. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was a message from her. It was a photo of Justin kneeling before her, looking utterly devoted. "Chloe," I tried to convince Justin. "He always listens to me, but this time he refused. Love doesn't care who got here first. Step aside and let us be together, okay?" Staring at the text, I wanted to laugh. We had known each other for 20 years. It felt like this was the first time I actually saw who Sophie was. I dragged her out of the misery of her divorce. I brought her into my home. Because I worried she would feel lost in a new city, I let her move into the apartment I shared with Justin. I even let Justin, who was a licensed therapist, counsel her and help her through her depression. She once held me, crying and shaking. "Chloe, I swear I will never betray you in this lifetime." And now, she was pregnant with my fiancé's baby. She told me love had no order. She asked me to let them be. But who was going to make up for the 10 years of love I gave him? My vision blurred. I ripped the 4 needle out of my hand and walked out. The emergency hallway was empty now. I crouched on the floor, the fever taking over my body again. It wasn't until the next morning that the doctor finally let me leave. As expected, Justin didn't come back all night. I pulled out my suitcase and started packing my things. Just then, Sarah from HR called. "Chloe, did you make a mistake? Why did you send me a resignation letter?" I froze. "Your profile has already been transferred to the Chicago branch. I don't have the authority to process your resignation here, so I rejected your request. But seriously, if you leave, so many people are going to fight for your position." My nails dug deep into my palms. In my inbox, the rejected resignation email was glowing on the screen. The reason was short and clear. Resigning to get married and focus on family. Cannot balance work and personal life. Attached to it was also a recommendation letter. A letter recommending Sophie to take over my position. The wording and tone were exactly Justin's. Sarah's voice continued on the other end of the line. "The director wanted to send you to manage the branch before, and you refused. Why the sudden change of heart?" I stared at the black text on the screen, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "It's nothing. I just changed my mind." The apartment door suddenly burst open. Justin stood there in a sharp suit, holding a massive bouquet of red roses. A group of our mutual friends rushed in behind him, cheering. Justin pulled out a stunning diamond ring, dropped to one knee, and looked up at me with deep devotion. "Chloe, marry me. Let me take care of you. I know you've always wanted to go to Tahiti for our honeymoon. I already booked the tickets. We'll leave right after the wedding, okay?" The crowd roared, chanting, "Say yes. Say yes." Everyone's eyes were on me. Family, friends, a proposal, flowers. This was the proposal I had dreamed of for years. I should have been thrilled, crying tears of joy. But I felt absolutely nothing. He logged into my email and threw away my career just to give it to Sophie. And then he used a lazy, cheap proposal to tell me he would take care of me. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was another text from Sophie. Justin said he would take responsibility for the baby. "I get the marriage license and your job. To make it up to you, he's giving you the wedding ceremony. But I don't want that. Chloe, I suffered so much in my last marriage. I have nothing. You feel sorry for me, don't you?" Following the text was a video. In the video, Justin's eyes were red as he grabbed Sophie, forcing a kiss on her. Even though she pushed him away, he kept chasing her. Again and again, until finally, Sophie melted into his arms, and they kissed passionately. The corner of my mouth twitched. I opened Sophie's latest Instagram post. I looked at Justin and asked, "She really is the perfect one to marry and have a baby with, isn't she? Is that why you had to steal my job and give it to her?" Justin's expression froze. A wave of panic, which I had never seen before, washed over his face. He stared at the photo Sophie had just posted, standing right in front of an OBGYN clinic. His eyes turned blood red. Before I could say anything else, Justin leaped to his feet, pushed past the crowd, and ran out. He ran so fast, as if his life depended on it. Everyone thought I would be devastated after being abandoned by my long-term boyfriend at my own proposal. The look in their eyes was full of pity. But I just calmly watched the bouquet of roses get tossed into the corner, trampled and ruined. Justin was my college senior. Back then, he worked part-time at the campus counseling center. During my second month of college, I called his line in the middle of the night. Eventually, Justin became my personal therapist. That was the time I depended on him the most. I opened up my heart, showing him every scar of being an abandoned foster kid who struggled to survive in an orphanage. He held me, his eyes red with tears. "Chloe, from now on, I will be your family. The family you chose yourself. I will never leave you." It took Justin 2 years to heal me, and I spent 8 years staying by his side. But before I could even get a real proposal, our relationship had reached its dead end. Sophie asked to meet me at a cafe downtown. The moment she saw me, she instinctively put her hand over her belly. Her eyes were filled with fake fear. "Chloe, I know you're mad at me. I'm sorry. But the baby is innocent. You wouldn't want him to grow up without parents like you did, right?" Her eyelashes fluttered, and tears began to fall. "Justin is good to me. He loves me. Chloe, you graduated from a top university. You're so strong. You can survive without anyone. But I can't." I stared at her in silence. Sophie suddenly grabbed my hand, begging in a low voice, "If I lose Justin, I'll die." I shook my head. "Sophie." Before I could finish, she suddenly let go of my hand and fell backward onto the floor. Justin rushed out from nowhere, shoved me aside, and pulled Sophie into his arms. He glared at me, his eyes burning with fury. "Chloe, you psychopath. If you have a problem, take it out on me." I was the one who fell for Sophie first. She did nothing wrong. I was pushed to the floor. Something fell out of my bag and clattered on the ground. It was a small dagger. I looked down at the dull blade, my chest aching. Years ago, when Justin found the self-harm scars on my arm, he custom-ordered this dull dagger and gave it to me. "Chloe, you need to face your fear to overcome it." I reached out and picked it up. Sophie shrieked, shielding Justin, her voice trembling. "Chloe, I'm the one who hurt you. Leave Justin out of this." Holding the dagger, I took a step forward. Just one step. In the next second, I was violently shoved again. The back of my head hit the hard tile floor, and my brain started ringing. Through my blurry vision, I saw Justin shielding Sophie, walking away without looking back. His voice floated back in the wind, soft and gentle. "Are you hurt anywhere?" Sophie sobbed and shook her head. From beginning to end, he didn't look back at me once. The high-pitched, metallic ringing in my ears was the only sound that remained in the world. I lay on the cold, hexagonal tiles of the cafe floor, the scent of spilled espresso and wet umbrellas swirling around me. The back of my head throbbed with a dull, heavy heat, and when I reached up to touch it, my fingers came away, slick and warm with crimson. "Oh my God. Is she okay? Someone call an ambulance. She's bleeding." That man. He just ran off and left her. The frantic murmurs of the patrons sounded distant, like they were shouting from the other side of a thick pane of glass. I stared at the ceiling, at the rotating wooden blades of the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me. For 10 years, my greatest fear had been the cold. When Justin first found me in the orphanage's unheated basement, huddled beneath a single damp blanket, he had pressed his warm hands against my cheeks and promised that as long as he was alive, I would never have to sleep in the cold again. I had spent a decade believing that his warmth was my only anchor, that without him, the shivering dark of my childhood would swallow me whole. But as I lay on the freezing tile floor, the blood slowly pooling beneath my hair, I realized a strange thing. It didn't feel cold. In fact, the ice that had been clutching my chest for the last 6 months, the panic, the desperation, the frantic urge to beg him to choose me, had completely dried up. In its place was a vast, quiet vacuum. A cafe employee, a young girl with kind, wide eyes, knelt beside me, her hands trembling as she pressed a clean cloth against the back of my head. "Miss, please don't move. The EMTs are on their way. Just hold on." "I'm fine," I whispered. My voice was remarkably steady, lacking any of the trembling hysteria that usually defined my interactions with Justin. I slowly pushed myself up, ignoring the sharp wave of dizziness that threatened to tilt the room. "Miss, you're bleeding." "I have to go to work," I said. I picked up the small, dull dagger from the floor, the silver-plated toy Justin had given me to face my fears. I looked at it for a second, then calmly dropped it into the metal trash can beside the counter, right on top of a discarded paper cup. I didn't call an ambulance. I walked out of the cafe, flagged down a taxi, and went directly to the city's forensic medical center to document my injuries. I wanted the state-certified stamps. I wanted the high-definition photographs of the finger-shaped bruise on my cheek and the hematoma on the back of my head. If Justin wanted to play the role of the devoted savior, I was going to make Sure, the State Board of Therapists got a front row seat to his performance. On Monday morning, the corporate headquarters of the Orenburg Group was washed in a pale winter sunlight. I walked into the administrative building wearing a high-collared black knit dress that completely hid the swelling on my neck. My hair was styled in a sleek, low bun, covering the small white bandage on the back of my head. My posture was straight, my leather briefcase held firmly in my hand. When I reached the 8th floor, my coworker, Sarah, looked up from her desk, her face pale. "Chloe," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously toward the executive conference room. "Justin. He's been in there with the regional director since 8. They're finalizing the transition files. Sophie's name is already on the directory." "I know," I said, offering her a calm, polite nod. "Is the compliance officer in? Mr. Sterling?" "Yes, but thanks." I bypassed the sales division entirely and walked straight to the secure wing of the legal department. Mr. Sterling, a stern-faced man whose entire career was built on keeping the company free of labor lawsuits, was reviewing a contract when I knocked on his glass door. He looked up, his brow furrowing as he saw the bandage peeking from beneath my hair. "Chloe, I thought you were on leave. Your resignation letter said." "I didn't write that letter, Mr. Sterling," I said, sitting in the leather chair opposite his desk. I pulled out my laptop, connected it to his office projector, and opened a folder of encrypted files. "This is the metadata log from our internal server," I explained, pointing to the glowing blue lines on the screen. The resignation email was sent last Tuesday at 11:42 p.m. According to the IP routing, the signal came from the private Wi-Fi network of Unit 1402, the apartment registered under Justin's name. I slid a document across the desk. At 11:42 p.m. on Tuesday, I was admitted to the emergency room of Orenburg General with a 104-degree fever. Here is my hospital admission log, signed by the attending physician. I didn't have access to a laptop or the corporate server. Sterling's hand froze. He picked up the medical log, his eyes scanning the official stamps. "And this," I continued, clicking the remote to bring up a second slide, "is the transaction log showing the transfer of my promotion slot. It was authorized using Justin's administrator credentials as a senior consultant. He forged my digital signature to recommend Sophie Reed for the regional director position." I set a thick, yellow folder on his desk. "Inside this folder is the forensic medical report of my injuries from Saturday afternoon," I said, my voice dropping to a cool, lethal register. "The hematoma on my head and the contusion on my cheek were caused by physical assault by Justin. I have already filed a formal criminal complaint with the Orenburg Police Department." I looked at Sterling, whose face had gone a sickly, mottled white. "If the Orenburg Group proceeds with the termination of my contract or the transfer of my position based on a forged resignation letter written by a senior manager who is currently under criminal investigation for domestic abuse, my lawyer will be forced to include the company as a co-defendant in our civil suit." Sterling stood up so fast his leather chair rolled backward into the glass partition with a loud, sharp clink. "Chloe," he said, his voice rising a full octave as his corporate panic took over. We had no knowledge of this. The company does not tolerate fraud or physical violence. Please take a seat. I am calling the regional director right now." The corporate execution of Justin and Sophie was carried out during the afternoon board meeting. They had been sitting in the executive conference room, Sophie wearing a sleek, new business suit she had bought with her future salary, her hand resting smugly on her stomach as she smiled at the regional director. Justin sat beside her, his face confident, already drafting the speech he would make to the department. "The transition is complete," Justin was saying, his voice smooth and professional. "We believe Sophie's background in administrative organization makes her the perfect candidate to lead the double doors of the conference room were pushed open. Mr. Sterling walked in, followed by 2 officers from the State Regulatory Board and 2 security guards from the building's lobby. "Justin," Sterling said, his voice cold and flat, "step away from the table." Justin's smile faltered, his gray eyes narrowing with irritation. "Mr. Sterling? We are in the middle of a formal transition meeting. This is highly inappropriate." "What is inappropriate is committing federal forgery and identity theft under our roof," Sterling said, throwing the compliance file onto the glass table. "The police have already verified the IP logs. Your admin credentials have been deactivated, and the state board has suspended your license as a registered therapist pending a criminal investigation into professional misconduct and patient abuse." "No," Sophie gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her face turning a pasty yellow shade of gray. "Justin, what is he talking about? You said. She signed the paper." "She didn't sign anything, Miss Reed." the police officer said, stepping forward, with a pair of steel cuffs. And you are being detained as an accomplice to corporate fraud. Please stand up. Austin, help me. Sophie shrieked, turning to Justin, her fingers clawing at his sleeve. Tell them we're pregnant. They can't arrest a pregnant woman. But Justin didn't reach for her. He stood frozen, his eyes locked onto the doorway where I was standing, my hands folded, my black dress fitting perfectly over my shoulders. He saw the bandage on the back of my head. He saw the cold, unyielding vacancy in my eyes, the same vacancy he had spent 10 years trying to cure so he could keep me under his control. Chloe, he whispered, his voice cracking. I was trying to save you. You were too weak for the pressure in Chicago. I was just protecting you. I'm not weak, Justin, I said, my voice sounding distant, like a radio losing its signal. I survived the orphanage basement without you. And I will survive Chicago. As the guards led them out, Sophie's screaming voice fading into the hum of the elevator shafts, the entire sales department fell into a dead, suffocating silence. I looked at the empty conference room, at the whiteboard where my name had been wiped off, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt a deep, permanent warmth spreading through my chest. The descent of Justin's life into the abyss was swift and silent. With his therapist's license suspended and his name blacklisted from every major consulting firm in the country, he was forced to vacate his luxury apartment. His parents, devout conservative people who had viewed his career as the family's greatest pride, refused to bail him out when the commercial fraud charges were filed. But the final blow did not come from the police. It came from the clinic. 2 weeks after the arrest, Wyatt sent me a PDF file on my phone. Chloe, his voice came through the receiver, sounding tired but grimly satisfied. We got the medical records from the clinic Sophie visited. The ones Justin rushed to on your proposal night. I opened the file. The ultrasound report showed a standard, healthy pregnancy, but the gestational age was estimated at 16 weeks. 16 weeks. 4 months ago, Sophie had been living with her wealthy ex-husband, Arthur, in the southern province. She hadn't even moved to Oakhaven yet. The child she was carrying was not Justin's. She had used his savior complex, his professional obsession with healing fragile, broken women, to lock him down, secure a corporate promotion, and take my life. She had known exactly which buttons to push, playing the role of the weeping, helpless victim until he was willing to throw away his 10-year relationship for her. I closed the file and archived it. I didn't feel any anger. I didn't feel the urge to call Justin and scream at him, to tell him what an idiot he had been. When a man's pride is built on being a savior, his ultimate punishment is to realize he has saved a monster. The morning of my departure arrived with a heavy, clean snowfall that covered the streets of Oakhaven in a silent blanket of white. I stood in the VIP terminal of the regional airport, my leather suitcase sitting beside my boots, a hot cup of black coffee in my hand. My ticket was confirmed. First-class seat to Chicago, where my new team was already waiting to welcome me. At the headquarters. Chloe. The voice came from behind me. It was dry, rasping, and shaking with a desperate, pathetic panic. I slowly turned around. Justin was standing near the entrance of the terminal. He was wearing his old, faded high school jacket, his face pale, his cheeks sunken, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. He looked like the boy I had met 20 years ago in the orphanage, small, lost, and entirely alone. He held a small, silver-plated frame in his hands, the photograph of us from college, the one he had taken when he promised to be my family forever. Chloe. He sobbed, his shoulders shaking as he took a step toward me. Please don't go. I'm sorry. I was blind. I was a fool. I let her play me because I was so terrified of you leaving me. I thought if you went to Chicago, you wouldn't need me anymore. I thought I wouldn't have a family. He fell to his knees on the polished floor of the terminal, his hands reaching out, his fingers trembling as he held the silver frame toward me. Look, Chloe, I still have it. The promise, the family we chose ourselves. We can start over. I'll go to Chicago with you. I'll work as a clerk. I don't care about my license. Just don't leave me in the dark. I looked at him. I looked at his wet face, his cheap jacket, and his shaking hands. And I realized that the healing he had given me was never about me. It was about him. He had kept me broken so he could feel strong. He had monitored my scars so he could feel like a god. You didn't heal me, Justin, I said, my voice quiet, carrying the cool, clean stillness of the winter air. I healed myself. You were just the person who taught me what a wound looked like. I turned around, picked up my suitcase, and walked toward the boarding gate. Chloe, please. Chloe. His voice echoed through the high arches of the terminal, but the security guards quickly stepped in, blocking his path, their dark blue uniforms completely swallowing his shadow. I didn't look back. I walked onto the plane, sat down in my seat by the window, and watched the white snow-covered city of Oakhaven fade into a tiny distant grid of yellow lights beneath the clouds. The winter in Chicago was cold, but my apartment on the waterfront was warm. The access to the office was only a 5-minute walk through the park, and my new team was professional, sharp, and entirely respectful of my work. On a quiet, snowy Friday evening, I sat by my large floor-to-ceiling window, watching the white flakes drift down over the black, icy waters of Lake Michigan. The room was silent, smelling of dry lavender and warm cedarwood. My phone sat on the wooden table, completely silent. There were no missed calls, no frantic texts, and no lingering ghosts. My left cheek was smooth, my head was completely healed, and when I looked at my hands, they were warm, dry, and entirely steady. I took a slow, deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs, and smiled. The family I had chosen was finally here, and her name was Chloe. I was finally, truly home.